years ago. I hate to think how long. And it was initially with a gladioli, and back in the day it was called a gladioli rose. Since then, I have also used this technique with a wide variety of flowers. Tulips, lilies are amazing, but today I'm showing you in a rose, so we're calling this a rosette. So before I dive into the technical and the mechanics behind creating a rosette, I just wanted to talk to you about your selection of materials, because this is critical in being able to create a really full, ultimately enormous, amazing flower. And I could not resist these homegrown roses by a local flower farm here near us called Thornton Brothers Roses. These guys have grown roses for 50 years or more, and they're absolutely stunning. They actually leave their roses on the bush for a longer period of time so that they open up really full like this. But even though they're full, they're not soft at all. They're really firm. I think that's, I guess, for me, what makes their roses so amazing. So for the center rose, we're looking for a rose that has a really lovely tight center. You can see there, it's beautifully formed. But for the other roses, or for the petals around the outside, we're looking for roses that really are quite large and blown. And the reason being is that we want to be able to remove the petals quite easily without tearing the petals. We want the petals really large. So you'll notice with the Sweet Avalanche, which is this variety of rose, that even though they're the same variety, you'll see there's two tones, which is really lovely this time of year. Just as we start moving into spring and the weather's warming up, I love that there's these, two variations, and that will make our rosette really interesting and unusual when it moves from one color to another. Okay, so I've chosen my favorite rose for the middle, and I'm just going to lightly peel the petals, just so that those outer petals are removed. I'm going to cut that rose, actually we'll leave it a stem here. So we'll cut that rose, and we're going to support wire this rose with a 20 or a 22 gauge wire. And that's simply just taking the wire up through the center of the base of the rose and just lightly twisting down the stem. You can see that technique in my fine wiring tutorial if you wanted to see it again. And then we're doing something really horrible. We're completely removing the petals from the rose, and we're just releasing those petals from that tight calyx and making a beautiful petal mess on the bench. I know, that just seems like just the worst thing to do, doesn't it? But this is how we create our petals. And the other items that we need for this design are little pins of 22 gauge wires. We're going to cut the large wires down to just little small pieces, and we bend those so that they're little hooks, and that is what we're going to use to pin our petals into that main rose. Okay, so before we begin, we need as clean an area here as possible to allow those petals to sit in really nice and tight. So we're going to just break off those sepals. You could cut those if you wanted to, but just pinching them off is fine, which is a shame because they're one of my favorite parts of the rose. But for this instance, we don't need them. And it's important to use the larger petals that you can find here. And 2 or 3 petals at a time. We just sit them up against that base of the rose and get your little pin, and we pin into the base of the rose. Spin it around, 2 or 3 petals again. And we pin into the base of the rose. Spin. Again, I'm looking for these large petals. And pin. Maybe that little one in there. And pin. You can actually use pearl-headed pins or the little steel pins for this as well. I find that they sometimes pull through the petal, whereas this little hairpin, you can see, just gives you a little bit more security. And pin. And then we just keep working around in this pattern, just trying to change the variation of the colour as well, so it moves from pink into more of that cream. So bring in some cream now. And just be sure not to pin it too tight so that it allows this ruffled frill to begin to move away from the other petals. Do you know what I mean? You don't want it too tight. Can you see now that it's starting to evolve into this really full-headed man-made rose? So I've used around 4 to 5 roses worth of petals, and I'm not going to obviously be using, you know, every petal, because some of the petals you can see there are just too small. But these ones here are beautiful, lovely large petals. Okay, so as you start making your way down lower and lower as you go, you can see that from the front you'll start to lose those petals. So what we want to do now is just creep a little bit up the stem, you know, up through into the petals, so that when we put the next layer in, it's starting to fan out around the outside. Do you know what I mean? Starting to build. Rather than creating a pom-pom, you can make it come all the way around here, but I actually quite like that graduation out. So to do that, we either need larger petals, or you can start pinning a little bit further up into the petals. So you're essentially pinning the petals into the petals now, rather than into that main rose too much. So can you see now that it starts to graduate out a little bit more? So we're getting close to the end now. I mean, you can see that you can just keep going and going. But you do get to a point where it is hard to finish because it's so beautiful. It's so lovely to make. It's got a very meditative quality about this one. It's just because you're just working with just the the texture, and I guess the feeling of these petals is just so beautiful. It's like marshmallow. The colour, is really beautiful to your eye. You can see I'm fluffing around in here looking for the largest petals that I can find. Especially now that we're getting to the end, I just want to make those as big as I can. Oh my goodness, I just love this. Look at that. Isn't that just stunning? Just so much I love about it. The tones, the just layer upon layer, it's just beautiful. So what I like to do to finish off any rosette is just to enhance it, give it a frill. You're also covering those mechanics that you don't want to see. So whether this is with foliage or a vine or like chain of hearts, tillandsia, old man's beard, lots of just something really light and cloud-like. But today, my smoke bush has just started to flower in the garden, so very, very new. But the tone of that burgundy is going to be absolutely beautiful around the outside. So I'm just going to add those little stems in just really softly around the outside of the rose, and again it'll just give you this lovely little cloud. Take all the foliage off. This is not about heavy leaves for this type of design, but you can see this beautiful lace, so gorgeous. So this would just make the most really beautiful, precious bridesmaid bouquet, even a bridal bouquet for someone that doesn't need a large, big, flouncy bouquet of blooms, but wants something really unique and really special. And I've made these in the past. I had a bride that had a big, full bouquet for herself, but really wanted her bridesmaids to be quite delicate and something really precious. Their dresses were really ornate and quite striking, and so it didn't need all the flowers to fight that. And I think it's important that when you're deciding, helping a bride or a couple decide on their flowers, it's important to think about not just what's on trend, but what's actually going to work for the gowns and the overall theme of the wedding. But you can see how delicate and beautiful that is. I'm just going to cut those stems. And just finish off by taping all of those little stems together to the initial rose stem. I'm just using my Flore tape. And that would be able, you're preparing the stem then for ribboning if you wanted to ribbon the stem so that it was really beautiful to hold. Your main rose is still, able to drink, so you can pop that into a vase if you wanted it to be in a vase. The same with the smoke bush. The smoke bush would be drinking as well. But obviously the other petals are not. You will find though that this bouquet, if we can call it a bouquet, a rosette, will last possibly up to 24 hours, 12 hours I would gauge. So be mindful when you're creating something like this for a wedding or event that you are making them quite close to the time of delivery. This definitely wouldn't be something that you would make days before. I just think just being able to keep those petals as hydrated as possible. So you've got a beautiful little stem to hold on to there. It'd be, very easy to ribbon beautifully over that. We'll give it a little spray. And I hope you agree with me how stunning and precious a rosette can be. It's something a little bit different to your everyday bouquet. with something that just looks absolutely natural and, you know, magnificent, but is basically a manipulation technique. So I hope you've enjoyed this little one. I absolutely adore this. See you next time.